We will kick off the first question with Danny Segura. Danny, please go ahead.
Hey Tyron, how's it going?
It's going great. How you doing?
Doing well, man. It's been a long road for you to get to this moment. Now that it's finally here, after all the hectic situation with COVID-19 and the postponement and everything, how good does it feel to finally be in fight week?
It feels great. I mean, everything happens for a reason. I think it was a blessing in disguise. I had a chance to really just grow as a fighter, mentally get myself prepared to fight, and added some new wrinkles to my game. And now it's a more prepared, more focused Tyron Woodley. And I think that's a fighter that the fans deserve to see.
Yeah, it's interesting times in your division right now. It seems the title picture is not all that clear. We thought that Usman was going to face Masvidal, but it seems that's not really working out at the moment. Do you think a win on Saturday could put you right in there, and maybe you're the one that challenges Usman next?
I think just when I win in a dominant fashion is going to set up a lot of wins for me. It could be a fight against Usman. It could be anything, but I think just going out there Saturday and focusing on that first, and not looking so far down the road is what's going to help me out in this situation.
Yeah, and obviously you were a very dominant champion. Can you explain what kind of happened in your last fight with Usman where you lost, and have you made any changes or any adjustments since that bout?
No, I really can't explain what happened, so I didn't really have to make adjustments because I just wasn't in my body that night. So I haven't really watched the fight, haven't really focused too much on it, just focus on moving forward from it, and that's what I'm doing right now.
When you say you weren't really there, like, I guess if you can elaborate on that feeling, like what exactly were you feeling when you were?
It's kind of hard to elaborate. You have to just be in that moment. You have to be a fighter to understand. Every fighters have those fights where they just felt like they weren't in their own body, and it's very difficult to explain. So um, just know that I'm prepared, I'm focused, and I'm ready to fight.
Yeah. And I recently spoke to Burns, and he said that, basically speaking on that performance, he said basically that you're no longer the beast that you used to be. Do you think people are putting too much stock on that performance?
Yeah, I just don't really care what anybody say. I'm out to say anything. Gilbert Burns is saying what he thinks you guys want to hear, as well as many fighters. That's my issue with the division right now. Fighters are not being themselves. Fighters are being what they think the fans want to see, what they think Dana wants to see, what they think the UFC sees as a fighter. I'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, and that's great if you really do that. But he'll see Saturday.
Thank you, Tyron. Good luck.
Cool, got it.
And we'll take the next question from Jeff Wagenheim with ESPN. Jeff, please go ahead.
Hey, Tyron. I'm curious about your thoughts about competing in the smaller cage, less space to maneuver around. You're a guy who is aggressive but also does move around. You're competing against a guy whose biggest threat is as a submission grappler. How do you think this impacts the fight for you?
More angles, less lateral motion. So it's just something small that you got to figure out. And Mike Tyson did it for years in the boxing ring. He didn't have 31 foot, but he used angles. He's cut off, used his footwork, and he had a lot of dominant performances. So just using more angles, more cuts, more forward pressure, and that should solve the problem. It is a small cage, though.
Have you competed in the smaller one before, or have you always been in the 30-foot cage?
I mean, I've been fighting since 2005. They didn't even have, a player to walk up in there. You walked floor level cages back in the day. So,
yeah,
you pretty much everything.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would ask you is just in general, you're in Vegas. The fight capital of the world is back in business. What are your thoughts about that? About the sport was on kind of on a pause and without a home, and now the UFC and the sport of MMA is back in the fight capital. What are your thoughts?
I just was being positive about everything. I think God has sovereign rule over everything, and I just been really positive about all the things and just trusting myself and doing everything to be safe and precautious, to keep myself away from certain people, to only train with a certain group of people, and just everybody being respectful of the fact that if one of us tests positive for COVID-19, none of us make money, none of us fight. So I think the UFC themselves have done a great job. From what I've seen and what I've experienced so far this fight week, they've taken every precaution to make sure that we are safe, and that means a lot to me and it means a lot to the fighter. So when I get on the octagon, I'm not really going to think about it. It's less distractive, it's less demands, it's less media face to face, There's more time to rest and focus on the fight and train and cut your weight.
Great. Thanks very much.
Got it.
And our next question will come from Gabriel Pangalangan with Dojo Drifter. Gabriel, please go ahead.
Hey Tyrone, so the last year has been a busy one for you. You know, you were in Thailand, you released an album, you were on the Titan Games. What was this year about for you? Was it getting rid of distractions? Or what was it all about for you?
Just growing and dealing with problems. You know, I had to deal with the fact that I lost my belt, and it was something I didn't expect to happen. I expect to retire, you know, as a UFC champion after, you know, trying to chase down a record of Georges St. Pierre. And, you know, sometimes you get hit with someone blocks and you got to be able to evolve from that. So for me, it was just basically reprioritizing my life and putting myself back in position where I can be the dominant champion I once was. And it was a lot of refocusing and a lot of, you know, getting rid of things that didn't belong in my circle. And, you know, whether it was people, whether it was things I was doing, time I went to sleep, what I was eating, how I was training. And I just got back to the basics. So now I'm the Tyron Woodley that, you know, the fighters should be scared of and the fans should be excited to watch fight.
That's awesome. And then after the last pay-per-view was UFC 249, some people attributed Tony Ferguson's loss to having too lengthy a camp. But you yourself, you've had two camps already, one for London and now this one in Vegas. Was having two camps a concern for you? And how did you make any adjustments to make sure you wouldn't be overworked?
Tony Ferguson's loss wasn't due to two camps. It was due to his game plan. It was due to his, you know, he's tough. He's too tough for himself sometimes. And you got to have a plan B. You got to have the ability to call audibles out there on a field, as you would say. So he didn't do that. You know, you can't just stand in front of Gaethje and you hear those punches just hitting him. You know, with no audience, it makes a lot of noise. So you can just imagine what it felt like. So he needed to switch things up, and he didn't do that. I don't know. I can't vouch for his training camp. I wasn't there. I don't know what he did, but I know each time we got the training camp or the date pushed back, then I elevated the training, because that means that if you elevate the training and when you go to tapering into the rest stage, you should compete at a higher level. So I just addressed my training camp to peak, and now I'm set to peak on Saturday.
Yes, and we know that Gilbert, you fought a lot of high-profile fighters, and Gilbert isn't really one of the highest-profile fighters. Was there any less motivation going to this fight, or was there trouble finding motivation?
You know, my motivation is on performance, going out there and doing what I can do, not fighting to anybody's level, not fighting to anybody's record or their name. It's fighting to my expectations. So whether I'm fighting someone with a huge name or someone without a huge name, you know, everybody in the UFC, especially in the top five, are dangerous. And everyone is dangerous in their own way. And Gilbert's dangerous in his own way. He got heavy hands. He has, you know, a compact size. He seems to be very aggressive, especially when he's, you know, in a rhythm. And also, you know, a submission threat is something that you really got to look out for. So whether he has a name or not, he posed some threats. And I have to be honest with that. And I got to be honest with anybody in the welterweight division. There's no easy cakewalk. When was the last time I even had an easy fight? I can't remember easy fights in Strikeforce. So at the end of the day, you know, I've not made my name, not made my career on taking or fighting easy opponents. So my motivation now is not so much beating him or beating Usman or beating anybody else. It's about going out there and performing. And if I perform, you know, what better thing to do is focus on my performance, because if I perform at the level that I'm supposed to, I'm going to beat anyone, everyone all day of the week anyway. So I just redirected my focus to that and that alone.
All right, thank you so much.
Got it.
And we'll take the next question from Jim Barcelona with the Miami Herald. Jim, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Tyron. I was wondering about the training for this fight, and if you had to train somewhere different, if you could talk about your training team, and if it was a little more limited because of COVID-19, and just that whole process leading up to this type of fight in these trying times.
You know, I was really blessed that I invested into a gym early on in my career. 2011, I opened up ATT Evolution, and I also have a home gym in my house. So Dean Thomas is my head trainer. He drove up actually from Florida 16 hours. So I had access in my own home to treadmills, bikes, bags, mat area, turf, sauna. And then I have my own gym in St. Louis that was completely quarantined, closed down to the public, where it was only me, my son, and a select few training partners that we all train together. So I really didn't miss a beat. and Atlanta was one of the first cities that kind of opened up, and I did a lot of training there when we knew at Madhouse. So with that, my homie Lucen and Dean Thomas, I usually don't use a big group of training. I mean, some of those things that you don't really think about, like if you train with too many people, they bump into each other, you slip on sweat, somebody get poked in the eye, or you got those people that are in the gym, they see the world champion, that had 5 titles, and they want to show their coaches and everybody else that they can compete with him, and it becomes like almost a gym Olympics. So I want to train with people that have that etiquette. They understand that you're supposed to push me to a point, but at the end of the day, me being hurt and injured and not being able to fight, you fail. If I get hurt and injured on your watch, you kind of fail, the mission. So it was kind of business as usual, to be honest.
One other thing that's interesting, too, is obviously there will be no crowd for this fight. Does that weigh on a fighter's mind, or when you go out there anyway, no matter how big the crowd is, you're just so focused when you're in there? Is it going to be a little different? What do you think?
I do a walkthrough every fight. I go in the octagon that Saturday morning, and I go there and I imagine the ring is, it's chaotic. There's so many people there yelling and screaming and booing and cheering and throwing tomatoes and, saying the worst stuff possible. Then I put myself in worst case scenario. Somebody got my back when I'm fatigued. Somebody got me in a submission. Somebody's got me in a mount. And I work through all those positions. So when I actually walk out, though it's maybe tens of thousands of people there or whatever the case may be, it really feels like an empty arena anyway. And I think I thrive in those moments. I thrive. I'm actually better at sparring in the gym than I am, in the octagon, to be honest. So when you make that atmosphere turn into the gym and turn into practice, and you take a little bit of pressure, I think I'm going to actually compete a little bit better.
And Tyron, I'll end it with this part of it. It was interesting. I read about Titan Games. What can you tell us about that? I know obviously the focus is on this big UFC fight in Vegas on Saturday, but what can you tell us about that and being associated working with The Rock?
It was a great opportunity, man. That course was no joke. Like, I don't know if you guys caught the first episode, but it's not anything to play with. It wasn't like we did a whole bunch of cuts and takes. They said go, you went, and it was exhaustive. So for me, I kind of treated it as strength and conditioning because I was technically in camp for Leon Edwards, and I didn't want to, want to make sure I didn't injure myself. But at the end of the day, you're competitive, you want to win. So I just found a happy medium to go out there and explode and do what I needed to do. And I just treated it, hey, that was my strength and conditioning today because it was that taxing on my body. And obviously working with The Rock, one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid actor right now in the game, a lot of charisma, a lot of knowledge. And he wasn't, shy about sharing some of that knowledge with us on set. So it was definitely an amazing opportunity. And I look forward to work with The Rock some more in the future.
Yeah, were you a Rock fan when he was in his pro wrestling with WWE?
Yeah, I was.
All right, thank you so much. And hey, avoid those tomatoes.
Okay, thank you, my man.
Okay, we'll take the next question from Amber Dixon with KSNV. Amber, please go ahead. Amber, you have been unmuted if you have a question. Okay, we will move on, and we're going to have Mike Heck. Mike, if you are ready, please ask a question.
I'd spoken to Abe Kawa back in December, and he had a lot to say in that conversation. But one thing that really stood out was his thoughts on how you had been approaching the fight game at that time. And he said he legitimately felt bad for the next person you'd be fighting because of what your mindset had become. Coming out of the fight with Kamaru Usman, do you remember the moment where that switch flipped for you?
I mean, the switch didn't switch instantly. It took months. I went into a state of depression for a while. I really wasn't talking to a lot of people. I was eating terrible. I wasn't training. And I really just did not expect. I felt like all my competition that I had before Kamaru Usman, I felt like that was the stiffest competition. I felt like all the great welterweights I beat before then were going to be my toughest competition. I didn't take anyone lightly, and I didn't think it was going to be on cruise control at that point. But I felt like I had that 5-round mapped out so well. I felt like my strategy, my game plan, my studying, my coaches, my team, I felt like I had everything in position to win. So I really had to deal with that. And it took longer than any other fight in my career. And I got to the point where, I felt like I faced it head on. I feel like I'm a better person. I'm a better fighter. I'm a better human being because of it. And I feel like it was necessary for my journey. Sometimes you see guys and they just go from the bottom to the top and they spurt all the way through, and they got everybody helping them out with whether it's media push or social media, and they just got all the things given. And it's the people that have to bounce back and have to face adversity and have to really show the fans what they're made of, that they're not going to just crawl up in a ball. And I'm coming out swinging, and I've always came out swinging in defeat, but this time it's a little bit different because I plan on making this a complete lifestyle change. The way that I'm taking the fight game, and really my focus is really set back to that amateur Tyron Woodley that was trying to turn professional, that wanted to fight in the UFC, that wanted to be a champion, that wanted to reign, that wanted to be the greatest. And now I'm out for everything right now.
So you sort of alluded to it that, some people are going to take what you just said as like, oh, he's going to turn back the clock to the guy that was surging towards the title, the guy who knocked out Robbie Lawler to become a champion. Is that, I guess, a fair comparison, or is this a completely different focus that you have these days?
At that point, it's different motivations. I never had the motivation just to make it to the UFC. So that set me apart from the beginning. Some fighters, and you can't knock them because it is a high, something very, to be, what's a good way to say it? It's something you should be proud of. If you're in the UFC, there's very few people that make it in the UFC. You're one of 600 people out of the entire world that's in the UFC. So you should be proud of that. But that wasn't enough for me. And being a champion wasn't enough for me. And they got to the point where I wanted to be the greatest welterweight of all time. And now I want to change it to where no matter who they put in front of me, no matter what the situation is, and my performance is so dominant that I don't have to talk, I don't have to beg, I don't have to ask, but the respect due is going to be given automatically because you're going to not be able to deny me. So it's similar to that person that fought Robbie Lawler, but once I got to that belt, once I started reigning, it became kind of strategy. But now it's just going to be performance alone, performance alone, performance alone. So it don't really matter who's in the octagon. No matter if it's a super fight, a number one contender, or a championship fight. Gilbert Burns, it don't matter. I'm just going out there to perform at my level.
Gilbert's had a lot to say about the road to getting this fight booked, that you didn't think he was a big enough name. You turned it down 3 different times. He's lost respect for you, and that you really didn't have a choice but to take this fight. At this point in your career, do you even pay attention to what people are saying about you? Do you need any extra locker room material at all?
No, I don't. And I don't pay attention to it because, one, I'm out to say anything. Two, at the point they're doing what they have to do. I didn't ask to fight Gilbert. I asked to fight Leon. I didn't ask to fight Kobe. I didn't ask to fight Usman, Till, or none of those guys. Those guys asked to fight me. I was the guy. I was the person that was at the top of the food chain, and they wanted to fight me, and they should. Because when I was at their level, when I was at a position where I wanted to get the opportunity, you know what I mean? That's what I had to do. The way that they're doing it is really corny, but I was able to do that with respect. When I wanted to fight Carlos Condit, I said, nobody want to fight him, I'll fight him. I'll step up to the challenge. I never had to disrespect him. I never had to talk bad about him. I'm still a fan. Carlos Condit may be my favorite welterweight to watch, even over George St. Pierre, just because he used his abilities and maximized every single time. He always gave us 100% effort and win, lose, or draw. He was exciting to watch fight, and he was a humble guy behind stage. So I gave him respect the entire time through. And I got to be real. Usman gave me respect as well. I really don't have an issue with him. But some of these other guys are just, you're doing too much. You're not even yourself. It doesn't even resonate well with the fans. And that's the reason why you don't have the following you should have. That's the reason why you haven't gotten the fights in the past. And this, for these guys, is just really a blessing in disguise because the opportunity for international fight to happen at this exact moment is not really there. And people yelling and talking about they're fighting anybody, anywhere, anytime, that's going to help them right now because at this point, it is going to be a position where they, may have those opportunities. So I'm looking for a performance. I really don't care. I don't need Gilbert to respect me. I'm respected by the world for what I've done.
And then last thing for me, just to add to what you just said, is just getting a win enough for you on Saturday, or does this need to sort of pose as a reminder that you were the guy who won and defended a world title several times and finished a lot of guys on the way up? Is this going to be, does this need to serve as a reminder to all of those people who may be doubting you?
I mean, for the rest of my career, just winning is never going to be enough anymore. I made that commitment to myself. I made that commitment to my coaching, to my family, that if I'm out there, you're going to get maximum effort, you're going to get maximum performance. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to send messages every single time I fight. It's not just because it's Gilbert. It's not because I lost my last fight. It's not because I won a title shot. It's because I'm capable of it. And if you're capable of it and you don't do it, then what are you out there for? So I'm going out there every single fight for the rest of my career, and I'm going to let everybody know that I'm the best.
Thank you, Tyron. All the